Can't get enough of Team Pete? Well, you've come to the right place, as each week I interview supporters of Pete Buttigieg, former candidate for President of the United States and current Secretary of Transportation. Hear their personal stories about why they became part of Team Pete and how they started a movement. Join us as we talk Pete, politics, and anything in between. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Ang, and I'm the host of this podcast, Talking with Team Pete. And today, my guest is Julie Parker. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Really appreciate it. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense from you what your Pete story is. So could you tell us all how you got involved in Team Pete?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. So I live in Seattle, but I am a transplant from Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana. So Fort Wayne is kind of a neighbor city to South Bend. It's only an hour and a half away. So when you live that close to South Bend, you know, there's little tidbits in the news and that sort of thing. And at the time that I was living there, Pete was, the mayor of South Bend. So you'd see a little bit in the paper, or you'd hear about it on the news or whatever. Something's happening in South Bend, something that he's doing as mayor. It would just kind of come across and you'd see it. And I remember seeing a few things with him as mayor and thinking, oh, that's pretty cool what he's doing for the city, And so that was kind of how I found out about the exploratory committee that he started in January. So I heard about it and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of looked because I thought, gosh, isn't he kind of young? I was like, I don't,
Just a baby.
Yeah. It's like, how old is he? That was my first thought. Not that I thought that, anybody would be, couldn't be president if they were young, but just, I guess we've just gotten so accustomed to our presidential candidates being older, that was kind of the first thing that struck me, So I did a little research, just like, oh, that's, okay. So then I was like, okay, I don't really know what exploratory committee is. So then I had to kind of figure that out, And I thought, okay, he's just kind of putting out feelers to see what kind of reception he would get for, if he decided to run for president. And then, so that kind of went on. And then there was going to be a big announcement and everybody was all abuzz about it. And, I had listened to a couple of interviews that he had done after he launched the exploratory committee. And I think what struck me the most was how at ease he was in conversing intelligently about what we needed as a country and why he was running, considering running for president. And so I thought, gosh, that this could really be, a great candidate. I'd not heard from someone, especially someone as young as him, some of the ideas and thoughts that he had about where our nation should be headed and some of the things that we needed to do to make things better for everyone. And so kind of a little background on me. I volunteered for Obama, and I was very heavily involved in that. Then when Bernie ran, I was very involved. I went to the DNC. I was at the Democratic National Convention in 2016. So I had a lot of, historically, a lot of involvement with other campaigns. But Pete was just, a man alone, as far as just, I'd never heard anything like him before. And so I was really struck by that and decided to donate to his campaign once he announced. And so that was kind of my first step into supporting him as a presidential candidate. So, yeah.
So you didn't do that for the other candidates in terms of donating and stuff like that?
I did a lot of volunteering. I did a lot of grassroots organizing, particularly for Bernie. We did rallies. We had all kinds of national events, things like that, and was very, very involved with Bernie. With Obama, that was kind of my first campaign that I really had ever volunteered for, and so all of my work with him was mostly volunteering, door knocking, phone calling, that kind of thing. So, but I've never gone. I don't feel like I've ever gone as fully all in as I did for Pete. So, I will.
So, what was it about him that made you kind of take that leap of faith, as some supporters would say, and go all in?
He just was unlike any candidate I'd ever heard. A lot of his, the way that he spoke, the way that he related to people, his kind of vision for what the country needed in order to, be better than it was. And it was never a lot of candidates you hear, they're really busy critiquing other candidates or talking about past presidents, how it's bad. And it was always about the policy. It was always about what are we going to do to make lives better for Americans? That was always kind of the foundational element of what he would talk about. And so, and also just really very knowledgeable about things. Really surprising to me for as young. Now, obviously, I looked into him a little further once I decided to support him. And, he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a Harvard graduate. I mean, of course he's gonna, but I just really was struck by his intelligence and the way that he communicated with people. It was such. He had such an easy way about him. And yet he could still communicate effectively. He could communicate in a way that didn't make people feel defensive or, I don't know. It was like, I remember when I first was like, I'm going to support this guy for president, after having been so staunchly supporting Bernie and Bernie running again. I'm going to tell you, a lot of the folks that I maintained friendships with after 2016 were very upset with me for jumping ship, you know what I mean, and going and supporting Pete. But so for me, it was a big deal. It was a big deal to support Pete over Bernie, and that is a testament to what an amazing candidate he was for president. So I couldn't get over how effectively he communicated and what a great vision he had for the country. It just struck me again and again. Every time I saw an interview or heard an interview, I was like, that is right, every time. So, yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I kind of had that same feeling that you did, too. I mean, it's just the way that he communicates and gets his points across. And just even with really hard policy, wonk talk and stuff like that, he can kind of dumb it down for the rest of us so that in a way that's a little easier to understand, right?
Yes.
And I just love that about him. Now, did you hear about him when he was running for DNC chair?
I heard little snippets about it, but I wasn't really, I guess I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to politics at that point. I think I was still pretty upset that Bernie didn't win. I think I went into like a politics resistance phase after that election. Because, like I said, I was at the DNC when he had to, step out of the race, and it was very emotional, just like we were emotional when Pete had to step out of the race. You know what I mean? So I think I was in like politics denial for a little while. So I would see that stuff come by, kind of the news, but I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to it. So
yeah, I think we all got a bit of a gut punch after the 2016 election, didn't we?
Yes.
I mean, it was not the outcome we wanted, and I think everybody was just in shell shocked, right? and
stunned.
Just stunned. just complete shock, basically. And so, yeah. And so I know that you and some other people started this group called the Barnstormers for Pete.
Right.
How did that come about?
So I think I should say that I was not at the very beginning of Barnstormers, because Lisa is really, it kind of started in New York. A bunch of ladies were like, saw Pete and they were like, this is the guy, this is it. And so one of the kind of the original ladies in the group of ladies in New York said she had been communicating with a guy in Iowa, and they were she was talking about the Iowa caucus, and the Iowa caucus is a big deal. Every candidate wants to win Iowa. That's a big goal, and there was just all this discussion around that. And she said, oh, it'd be great if we came to Iowa, could we come to Iowa? Could we observe the caucus? Like what's possible? And he said, oh yeah, come on. So she basically started this Facebook infrastructure and created all these groups, states, and different types of people for Pete on Facebook. And said, yeah, let's put it out there for anybody that wants to come. Like, let's, the idea I think behind it was when Obama was running for president, he did I forget what it had a different name at that time, but it was essentially the Democratic National, it was like the dinner. So the LJ, but it had a different name and they renamed it. But, and when Obama was there, he had thousands of supporters came to that dinner, and really that was a catalyst for him to win Iowa, that kind of showing up for your candidate. So that was kind of the idea behind it. Let's go to Iowa. Let's show up for our guy, And so I heard about it because when I first started supporting Pete, I was worried, what am I going to do when I've capped out my donations for him? Obviously I'm going to volunteer or do whatever, but from a monetary perspective, what am I going to do? And I had done, during Bernie's campaign, I had done buttons for Bernie. And
oh, really?
I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to do that for Pete. I'm doing it. So I created a website, made some button designs, put them up, whatever. People started buying them. And Kat, who was the woman that was part of the original group, that she connected with the one of our volunteers in Iowa, she was doing like some kind of an event for young Democrats, and we were friends on Facebook. And I said, hey, do you need some buttons for that? Like, I can make you some buttons for your event, So that's how Pat and I kind of became. I mean, we were friends on Facebook, but we didn't really know each other. And so then I became friends with her, and then I was friends with the other ladies in the group. And then when they said, hey, we're talking about doing this thing for Iowa, going to the caucus, and we're just going to put it up there. And I said, I want to do it. I'll do the website. What do we need? So I put up a website, and we got a plan in place. And you'll have to forgive me because the guy is right outside my window mowing the lawn. Oh. The beauty of
you can barely hear him. It's okay.
So so we had the website, and then it just took off from there. We went from I think in a week we had 400 people signed up. And then in 3 weeks we had, I think, 800 or 900 people signed up. We couldn't believe it. We're like, this is awesome. So so that's how Barnstormers for Pete got started. Of course, we brought all these people to the LJ. Then we did the early states tour, so everyone could join us in the early states. And then of course when Pete decided that he was going to step out of the race and support Joe Biden, we pivoted and we became Barnstormers for America, and are still actively doing things to support, democracy, right? So, so that's kind of how we got started.
Yeah, that's really awesome, because I remember seeing on a lot of the Pete Facebook groups all these pictures of barnstormers in their yellow T-shirts, and just, it was just so amazing, and just makes you feel, you're just filled with joy when I see that. So, and I think that's one of the nice things about the Pete supporters is that I remember going to one of your events, the Barnstormer events, I think in Reno. It was for the like the Women's March was around that time too, around Pete's birthday. And just meeting people there who have kind of the same mentality. It's like meeting your people, and everybody is just so happy to be there supporting this guy and with a common goal, and just and I think the whole rules of the road that he came up with is just so awesome to me, because I think those things should be like the standard of any political campaign moving forward. These are the rules of the roads you should abide by. And I feel like everybody who was out there representing Pete kind of, stood to that. And just was so kind and respectful with people, even the way that they, try to get others to support him and stuff like that. It was just really exemplary, really. And I think it's a reflection of him as the person that we support, right? Whatever is good in him is kind of translates to us. And I that's what I so love about him. And I think there's like one quote where he said in his concession speech about leaders, like they bring out the best in us or the worst in us, right? And I feel like he brought out the best in us. Because I remember when the former guy took office, and I felt like every day I was grumpy and just, in a bad mood. And just seeing him or hearing his voice made me just ticked me off, right? And I'm not the kind of person who likes to cuss. But I felt myself, and I started cussing so much, and it's like, okay, what the F did he do this time, or who the F did he insult now? And so, and I could tell that I'm becoming this really negative person, and I didn't like who I was becoming. And so when Pete came along, it's like, wow, this guy, he's just so kind and nice, and he's just so sweet, and he never says a negative thing about anybody. And I just felt, wow, he's so inspiring.
He really is.
Like, I want to be like Pete.
That's right.
So what is it about Pete that you love so much? I mean, you kind of reflected on that a little bit about the way he communicates, but I guess as a person,
well, I feel like he leads by example. That's a really important, a really important thing for someone, I feel, who is running for the highest office in the land, to be someone who leads by example. So, he's not out there spouting off the rules of the road or talking about, integrity, or talking about, all of the things that you want in a president, right? So he's not out there just, spewing all this stuff and then not leading by example, and I think that's a pretty critical thing. And it's one of the things that I really was the most impressed by with him, is that he was always doing that. He was always walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Something you just really don't find in a lot of politicians. He just was a lone reed out there, just being this exemplary guy that we could all admire and respect, and appreciate the vision that he had for the country. And I feel like when you are in a situation where you can believe in something or someone like that, it's huge. It's very empowering. You feel like you can get out there and you can do what's needed to be done in supporting this candidate without hesitation, because you feel confident that they are who they say they are. You know, he's the real deal, and that's huge for me. So that, I think that's probably the biggest. Again and again, I saw examples. The other thing I really liked about Pete, which you touched on, is that he has a really keen ability to be able to explain it to people in a way that they can relate to it in their own lives, you know. So one of the things he always says I love is he'll say something and he'll say, for example, and then he'll give you an example, you know, which is great, because I think for a lot of people, they want to understand how the policies or the vision that you have for the country, how is that going to impact me in my life? You know, that's important to people. If you're asking people to vote for you, that's a really important, you know, thing to be able to do. And a lot of politicians are just not capable of doing that. You know, they'll stand up there at the podium and talk all day about, you know, all the grandiose things that they plan to do. But, you know, let's break it down and talk about how is that going to affect me in my life personally. You know, so and I think that's just one of the other things that made him a really good candidate, and continues to make him someone that I respect and admire, even now in his capacity as secretary. So, yeah,
absolutely. So, what was your first reaction when he was nominated as secretary?
Joy. I was very joyful. I was like, "This is happening! Yeah. This is happening!" So I didn't get to go to South Bend. I would have loved to, but yeah, I didn't get to make it out there. And so, but I did watch it, you know, on TV, and I just felt a lot of joy that day, and the rest of the campaign, you know, just really excited to support him and to be part of a community of people that were also supporting him with the same vigor that I was, you know. So it's nice. It was good.
Yeah. I was reading about all these positions that he might be able to get, and there were a lot of, you know, rumors out there, and I had initially didn't think transportation like that's a little out there, but then, you know, considering his role as a mayor. Right. And at the local level, how transportation affects cities and whatnot. And then, of course, I had to read all about transportation and what it entails.
We all became transportation nerds that day.
Yeah,
like, you know?
Exactly. So, yeah. And I didn't realize, you know, so much goes into it, and, you know, at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. And all that comes with it. And so it's a huge job, and the way that he's going about it has been amazing. It has really been
he's taking everything that he would have been able to, I think, achieve as a president of the country, and using those same kind of skills and, you know, a vision for things, and his way with people. He's using that in his current role. And I mean, I think everybody knew that's what would happen, you know? I mean, aside from the fact that he's just such a total nerd, right? I mean, this is the perfect, you know, if he can't be president, this is a great job for him. Right. So I've really been excited and impressed, and have gotten really involved as a board member with an organization called Build the Era, which was started when you know, when Pete became transportation secretary. We were all like, let's talk about transportation. Let's talk about transportation advocacy. Like, you know, we're going to pass this infrastructure bill. Let's support it. You know, what can we do in our communities, right? So, lots of opportunity out there for folks who support Pete. You know, to support him in what he's doing currently, and just in general. You know, I think being a member of Team Pete is something that you don't stop being, I think is a true statement. You know, I'm always going to be Team Pete.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I feel that way
yeah,
too. And I'm glad you touched upon the fact that he leads by
yeah,
example. And I think that's so important in a leader because
yeah,
they are the role models,
yes,
right? And we look up to them, kids look up to them. And so, during the former guy's years,
yeah,
it was pretty
yeah.
brutal, right?
It was nothing you ever
um,
wanted to admire or appreciate ever. Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and how deflating is that to see that? Like you said,
yeah.
you know, just spending every day being frustrated and angry, and you know, as much as you try to not let it affect you, it absolutely does. You know, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it
yep,
does. So he's definitely a breath of fresh air,
absolutely,
and
yeah.
and I think, well, I guess I should ask you, how do you think the political climate is right now, and seeing Pete on
Yeah.
TV, on Fox News,
hmm
doing his
Yep.
thing, right?
Yep.
It just gives
It
you
really
hope, right?
does. Slayer Pete, man, he's out there. He's out there not only doing his own job, right, but
Yeah.
also really being a loud voice for the administration and the good work that's happening, you
hmm
know,
Yeah.
with Biden as president and all of the things that we're achieving with him at
hmm
the head. You know, I think I have a lot of respect for Pete because he, you know, not only is just doing an amazing job as secretary, but he's also still really supporting, you know, all of the things that we supported when he was running for president. You know, democracy, and you know, he talks about everything, not just transportation. He's talking about, you know, voting rights,
Yeah.
and talking about
Yeah.
everything that happened with Roe v. Wade and women's rights and all of the things that we care about. He continues to talk about, even in just in his capacity as secretary. He's still, you know, and I just feel like he still really cares about those things. You know, you don't have to be
hmm
the president to care about those things, you know?
hmm
And
hmm
so I think that he's just had a huge impact. And what's really has been amazing to me is that he has uh, begun getting even more supporters after all of this, you know,
Yeah.
like the people
Yeah.
that didn't give him a chance when he was running for president.
hmm
This is a great
Right.
opportunity for them to see him, because he
Yeah.
continues to be everywhere, right? Like when
hmm
he was running for
Yeah.
president, there's my cat that I
Oh,
told you.
there's your.
When he was running for president, you know, he was everywhere, and even now as secretary, he continues to go and, you know, be on Fox
hmm
and, you know, talk on all the news, does all the press and everything, and
hmm
it's just a joy to see how many people have said, man, this guy Pete is great, but why didn't I, you know, didn't I notice this
Yeah.
before? Like, you know, and every
Yeah.
time that
Yeah.
happens, I get so excited because I'm just like, that's right.
Yeah. Me
You're
too.
learning what we already know and have known for a
Yeah.
long time, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. They're finally catching
Yes.
on.
Welcome to Team Pete, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I happen to sometimes be on Twitter. I'm not on
hmm
Twitter, but sometimes other Pete friends would send me
Right. To
links
tweets or
to what's
whatever.
happening on
Yeah.
Twitter, and sometimes I would read the comments, and people are like, "Why isn't this guy everywhere saying this
Right.
message?" I
Yeah.
mean, nobody seems to be on message except for
hmm
this guy. And I think it's so important that people understand how much the Biden administration has succeeded
Yes.
so
Yes.
far in doing what they've been saying that they would
hmm
do. But it gets so drowned out by, the right wing media, and all they do is complain about
Yeah.
things that are happening, but they can't seem to
Right.
fix it, don't have a solution, but
And they're
yet they
not
just keep
voting for it,
complaining. And
right?
it's like,
So it's like,
yeah, and they're not voting for it to fix it, which is very
yeah,
ironic.
yeah,
And it's just like, what are you people even doing in
yeah,
Congress?
yeah,
I mean, it's like, the point of being a public servant is to make people's lives better, and all you're doing is making people's lives worse with all these
It's money.
policies that you're
It's
putting out there.
money and power. I am, obviously when Roe was overturned, that's devastating to all, the whole country. And the thing that I am seeing though with that is that I think people are starting to wake up, little by little. I've heard stories from friends. I myself have had encounters with members of the Republican Party that have said, this is not, no, this is not what I support. Who are deciding they're going to vote Democrat, and not so much because they are a Democrat, but because this is not the Republican Party that they want to support, So I think, and a lot of people are listening to Liz Cheney and, a lot of the things that she's saying about that. And I think the January 6th hearings are really bringing to light a lot of things that people either didn't realize or have had their head in the sand about. And and the fact that Pete is out there and he's also talking about these things and people who respect and admire him are listening, I think that's, that's a good thing. So it's going to be...
I hope so. I hope you're right. And I hope that people are waking up because it just feels like democracy is on the brink right now.
I feel like it's on the chopping block and we just cannot have that. I mean, it is the very foundation of our country. So I just, for me, I mean, that's a big part of why, Barnstormers are going to be doing midterm tour 5 states, because we need to get out there, talk to voters, make sure that they understand the importance of voting, particularly in the midterms. For us to lose that majority in the Senate would be, obviously in the House too, but not as big of a risk in the House, but the Senate would just be, it's really a challenge already to try and get things. I mean, you see with Manchin and Sinema, and so I think it's really important for people to understand the gravity of the situation and really make sure that they're getting out there and they're voting, so,
and don't keep your head in the sand,
I mean,
like what's been happening. I mean, gosh, it's it's scary, but I'm so grateful that there are folks like you and your group that are out there with boots on the ground and helping, knocking on doors and whatnot. So gotta, and I didn't realize the importance of down ballot elections until I came across Pete, and whenever he talks about that, it's like, it really is extremely important, because even at the state level, the county level, who you vote for, these are people who make decisions about our lives daily. And so we need to make sure that we do our research and not just, close our eyes and check a box.
Yeah, I think people, it's pretty common for people to just think only about the top job and not consider the ramifications of having the wrong person in office in their state, These are the people that go to Washington to represent you. So make sure that you are loud and clear about what you want in your state. I feel very fortunate living in Washington. We've got a number of really great representatives. Our Senator, Maria Cantwell, Patty Murray are amazing. So I feel very grateful to live in a state where that's, I don't feel like those folks are really at risk. Obviously any election you're going to have, somebody who runs against you most likely. But, I just feel like I'm grateful for that, but I see these other states. So it's like anytime there's a situation where I can adopt another state for whatever efforts I'm going to put forward, a state that needs that support, swing states, Nevada, Georgia, so Pennsylvania is another one. So I just think it's really important that if you live in a state where you don't feel like the risk is that great, go to another state or, adopt a candidate from another state and support them, make phone calls, do postcards. Those are very effective, you know. So there's lots of things that people can do, even in the time of COVID, that will provide huge support. And these campaigns appreciate every second that you can give them, every dollar, whether it's, you know, a little bit or a lot. They appreciate it, and it really does help. So.
Yeah. So is there something on the Barnstormer website for people to go on and see if they want to help and volunteer and
if you,
do postcard writing or something?
If you go to barnstormersforamerica.com and you go look under events, there are 5 states. It's going to be all of the weekends in October plus the first weekend in November. We're doing 5 swing states all over the country, so really no matter where you live, you probably would be relatively close to at least one of them. And basically going to support the Get Out the Vote efforts in those states, whether it be for organizations that are focused on voting or specific candidates. One example, someone we supported in the 2020 campaign was Mark Kelly in Arizona, and we'll be doing some support for his campaign as well there. And so, you know, I think, you know, the road trip has been a really big part of our kind of what we've done. But COVID has made that really challenging. So if anybody wants to do boots on the ground, we're gonna, you know, get our boots on and get out there and knock doors and have our usual kind of community time where we get together and support each other and you know, share a meal, and it's just our usual you know, Barnstormer event style that we're going to do just over weekends in those weeks in October and that one weekend in November. So anybody that wants to join can join us, and we're hoping to have a pretty good turnout for all of the different states, and, you know, hopefully really make a difference in supporting.
That sounds amazing. So for people who are kind of introverted, who don't like to talk to strangers, make phone calls to strangers, what would you recommend for them?
You can do postcarding.
If they're not comfortable.
Like, we have a lot of people that do postcarding campaigns. We have a partnership with Activate America, and they have a lot of postcarding campaigns that we get involved in. Different campaigns, different organizations that support voting. It could be anything from supporting a particular candidate to sending out postcards to talk about the different candidates that support women's rights, or, you know, support voting rights, support gun reform, you know. So there's all different kinds of things that you can do. Now, what I will say is that we, Barnstormers, we have become part of a coalition of organizations that are focused on democracy, whether it be voting rights or particular candidates. And the name of the coalition is called Positive Change for Everyone. So the website is positivechangeforeveryone.org. And we are doing our postcarding efforts there, but there are some other events too that are being put forward by the different coalition members that people can get involved in. And so if you go to that website and you look under, you know, get involved, you can see all the different opportunities. So there's lots of different ways that people can participate, whether they be introverted or not. So,
yeah. Great, thanks. So is the positive change, is the 4 FOR or the number 4?
Positive change for FOR, everyone.org.
.org. Okay. Yep. All right. And then under get involved, is how they would find out more info.
And there's a whole list of things that are happening, events and different ways that you can support postcarding, that kind of stuff. So, and, you know, we try to make sure that, because each of the different members of the coalition, they all have, you know, things that they're doing, whether it be locally in their community or sometimes it's a national thing. So you know, a lot of people are asking, what can I do? How can I get involved? And there's just lots of opportunity out there for anybody that wants to give of their time and talents. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. We need everybody involved,
absolutely.
don't we? I mean, this is, I mean, the last election was the
Right.
election of our lifetime.
The
This one is
midterm
also,
of our lifetime, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Yeah. So through all your volunteering and stuff, I'm sure you met Pete in
I have
person, right?
actually.
Yeah. What was your initial impression of
well,
him?
I met him in Las Vegas. I had made him a shadow box of buttons, a bunch of the different buttons that I had made. Some art by some Pete supporters who had donated their art, some designed by me, and I took it with me. And my initial response, or my initial, you know, thought when I met him was how kind he is, and also everything can be going on in the room, right? You're there, you're talking to him. Sometimes it's chaos. I mean, I've met him a couple times, so sometimes it's chaos and people are walking around and there's lots of noise and loud and whatever. But when he's talking to you, he has the ability just to make you feel like you're the only person in the room, even if it's like 5 seconds. You know what I mean? You don't notice what's going on around you because you feel like you're getting his undivided attention. It's hard. That's hard to do. Like, you know, kudos to him, because that's not something I'm particularly good at, right? So I think it takes a certain kind of person to be able to do that. So I had the opportunity to meet him a couple times, and that one was the most memorable because I gave him the shadow box as a gift, and it was really great. Yeah,
I'm sure he was very appreciative.
Yeah, I have. That's actually the photo that I took with him is on my Twitter. So at Buttons for Pete, it's on the pictures on my Twitter page, and it was definitely a great. I had met him one other time, but I had taken someone with me, and she's disabled, so she doesn't really get out much. And this was her first time to meet Pete, so I wanted her to have the full experience. You know what I mean? So, and actually, when I saw him, when I met him the first time, I had driven from Seattle to Brooklyn. This was my very first Pete event that I went to in Brooklyn. I had driven basically across
Brooklyn, New York? Whoa.
Yeah. And
you
actually,
drove?
He asked me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Seattle. And he said, I think you might be the winner of the furthest to drive person here today. I said, well, yeah, you might be right. I don't know. Like, maybe. Like, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it was pretty awesome. And Chasten was there, and it was really,
nice.
It was good.
Nice. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have met him at a fundraiser. It was kind of a private fundraiser, and because I didn't want to go to like a big rally where I wouldn't be able to meet him. And so I think it was a July 4th event that somebody had posted on one of the Facebook groups, and I heard him, and I said to myself, I have to meet this guy in person. I have to shake his hand. And so everything kind of worked out, and I was able to meet him. And
Did you?
I had the exact same reaction that you did. It's like, when I met him, the only thing I wanted to ask him was if he was wearing a Skagen watch, which is a Denmark brand, and I noticed that it looked like it was the brand, and I love that brand, and so I had to ask him. That was the only thing I could get out of me. But just kind of standing aside and watching him with other people, and the way that he's able to just kind of focus on you and not anything else around him was just really amazing to me. Like his ability to be present with whoever he's talking to, and just makes you feel so seen and special, right? Because he's listening to what you're saying and not being distracted by anything else. even if there's a
Yeah,
cat
and
walking
as many
by,
people as he
right?
meets in a day, I mean, that is just a skill. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, how do you do that? Like, that's really
yeah,
impressive. So,
yeah. And just the joy on his face is just
yes,
so genuine that you can just tell he's just not, smiling just
right.
for the sake of
Yep, the
smiling
real
at
deal
you.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that
Mm-hmm.
authenticity just kind of shines
Yes,
through every time.
that's true. I agree.
Yeah. So when you mentioned that your Bernie friends were
Mm-hmm.
not happy with you, were you able to convert any of them over to
Not
Team
that I'm
Pete?
aware of. I think
Uh-huh.
it's very difficult, I think, because the, there are people who supported him, as I did, staunchly, and really feel like he, got the raw deal, I guess. Or, you know what I mean? He got dealt a bad
Mhm.
hand, but I think people still really feel that. I,
Yeah.
I feel like at a certain point you can look past that and say, if there's a candidate that's going to be the best, I want the best. I want to put my support behind the person who I feel is going to be the best president. That doesn't mean that
Mhm.
I don't still admire Bernie, but
Mhm.
I just felt very strongly that Pete was going to be the best, and yeah, it
Yeah.
was very difficult because like I said, I was very heavily involved. I went to the DNC, our organization, um, you know, was able to, just because of what we had done to support the campaign, were able to get into the building. And I just remember thinking, gosh, if I think at a certain point, that he's not gonna be the candidate. And I think people were just really very bitter about it. And because
Mhm.
of them being so bitter and because they couldn't move past that, it was really difficult for them to, even think about there being anybody else but Bernie. And especially because so many felt that he, got handed a bad deal. And so they felt like there was a little bit of redemption that maybe was owed to him in 2020. So
Mhm.
when I decided not to support him and to support Pete instead, I mean, what I'll say is that if it had gotten down to the wire and he had been the candidate, I would have supported him. So it's not anything against
Mhm.
Bernie. It's just
Yeah.
I want the best guy for what I feel is the best guy for the job. And I really felt like Pete
Yeah.
was that for
Yeah.
me. So, but it's difficult
Yeah.
for people that really felt like Bernie had, the nomination coming to him in 2020. He should have gotten it. To talk to those
Yeah.
people and explain why you have gone from
Mhm.
staunchly supporting Bernie to now not. So there was a
Mhm.
lot of,
Mhm.
yeah, I think there was a little bit of resentment toward me that
Resentment.
I had, especially because I had done a lot
Yeah.
and now I wasn't doing that for their candidate. I was
Mhm.
doing it for someone else. Um,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
felt kind of angry about that. So, but you have
Yeah.
to go with what it is that you believe, and um,
Mhm.
and that's what I did. So, whether they were happy
Yeah.
about it or not, I mean, that's unfortunate, and certainly there were many heated discussions about why I felt
Yeah.
that Pete was a better candidate. I tried to convert some
Mhm.
folks. Certainly put forth an effort, but at the end of the day, I mean, if they
Mhm.
did, I didn't know about it. The few people that I was really involved
Mhm.
with were like, absolutely not. So, okay, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna, hold it against you, but this is what
Yeah.
I'm doing. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah,
really
it is.
unfortunate, isn't it? Because like you said, if Bernie was the
Sure.
nominee, we would all go
And Pete
full
would
full
have
in and
too,
support him because
you know.
the ultimate goal
Yes,
is to beat the
right.
other guy, right? And I feel like, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thinking is
Right.
not being a team player. And that I think that's the problem with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Democrats these days is that there's so much infighting. It's like
Yeah.
grandstanding with each other rather than staying on message the way Republicans do. And I just wish they did that more
I agree
of that.
with you there, for sure.
And it's just insane. We're all on the same team, and just be like Pete.
Always
be a team player like Pete.
That's the truth right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Right. Gosh, he is such a team player, and every single interview that he's doing lately has been every time supporting what the president's doing, and it's like always on message, and people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. They are getting things done. We just may not see it in our life, but hey, it is helping, and and change doesn't happen overnight.
That is true. I mean, I feel like Pete does a really good job of breaking things down in a way that you can understand how it affects you personally. I really loved his recent talk when he was before the committee talking about electric vehicles, and about really just came to that thing armed with knowledge and facts, and this $50,000 price tag is not even realistic. Our first electric vehicle was used and it was only $14,000. Like, where are you getting these numbers? Like, and he does it in such a way that he is respectful, but he is also, they're getting a little bit of that Pete side eye, like, who are you? What's this? So he is able to communicate in a way that is, just totally dismissing all of these things that they're saying that are not true, but in a respectful way that doesn't create, he's not combative about it. He's just, these are the facts. And you need to know.
These are the facts, exactly.
I appreciate that about him, and I think more and more people are seeing, what a skilled communicator he is, and are, being impressed by him and his ability to, get that message out there. So I really like that.
Yeah, he thinks on his feet so well, and he's like a walking encyclopedia, really, because everything, nothing phases him, and he always has like the perfect answer. And like that in that hearing where he asked the guy, so are those this year's numbers? And the other guy was like, oh no, this is last year's. Like, you're bringing last year's numbers to comparing it with this year's numbers. Okay. So making him look foolish without trying too hard.
I appreciate that about him a lot. He just has a way.
Yeah.
And I
really does.
It's one of his greatest, skills. He just is very adept at doing that. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you, how did you feel when he decided to pull out of the race? I know we were all heartbroken, but
pretty.
What was
pretty devastated. I understood why he did it. Obviously he knew that the numbers were just not going to be there and all of that. And I think we got a pretty good glimpse of the things that impacted that decision from the Mayor Pete movie, which I thought was great, the documentary, because I feel like it really gave us some kind of insider information into what brought that decision to be. But also, I think it was very strategic on his part, because, him backing out of the race was kind of the catalyst for Biden, because not only did he bow out gracefully, but he also said to anyone that would listen and all of his supporters, I would like you to support Biden. This is what I am asking of you. And it was a hard ask. It was a hard ask.
I know it was, wasn't it?
But I think we took a couple of days, and just thought about it and were like, this is what we need to do, you know? So that's kind of how Signs Across America was born, because of that, because we knew that we needed to do something big for Biden. And it was the middle of the pandemic. What are we going to do? How are we going to get the word out across the entire country and get people to vote for Biden? And that's what we did. So, and it was, and the Biden's campaign appreciated it, because I think it gave them a sense of what Team Pete is capable of and what Barnstormers are capable of. So we're really proud of that. Yeah.
And I think President Biden at the time kind of gave a shout out to the Barnstormers too.
It's actually on our Facebook page. We posted the video.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Is it?
Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
We were proud of that, because we felt like, you know, let's take all of this hard work and let's take all of this, you know, energy that we have, that we've been putting into supporting Pete's campaign. Let's pivot, even though it's hard, and let's do what we need to do to support Biden. So I think everybody just needed a minute before they did that. And there were some people that were like, nope, I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. But I think others were like, understood the importance of doing that. And it all, worked out the way we wanted. And then the pandemic just raged on, like, I think the midterms are going to be an interesting situation. And, all any of us can do, any of us that care about this country and care about preserving our democracy, should do everything that they can to support it. So,
yeah, at the very least, vote, right?
Absolutely. So,
yeah. Well, hopefully, we're hoping for the best. I mean, it sounds like from the polls and everything, Democrats, things are kind of looking up. So I'm hoping it continues and people will wake up, like you say, and really pay attention to what's happening. Otherwise, we can't continue on this path. It's
every
very
time you
destructive.
See something happening, a bill trying to pass or whatever, and you are witnessing these Republicans that are voting against something that is just common sense that that should be voted for. It's frustrating. It really is, and I really hope that people, if nothing else, this is giving an opportunity for people to see that these folks should not be continuing to stay in office. Let's vote them out. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. They need to be voted out so that people who actually believe in democracy, believe in helping people, the citizens, making people's lives better, actually be a public servant. Can't call yourself that if you're doing everything in your power to vote against them.
True.
Right? So, so. All right. Well, thank you, Julie. I really appreciate our chat. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to subscribe so this channel can grow and I'll be able to share more stories with you each week. Thank you for listening.